Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope that you had a great week and that you're looking forward to a lively, intentional life groups discussion today. So, we're right in the middle of our series, All Day, Every Day, where Pastor Tom is walking us through the book of James and teaching us how to find a routine and a rhythm and a habit of faith in our life. So, as we jump into today's discussion, a quick reminder, just be mindful of other people's feelings as you're sharing. So this week, Pastor Tom was in the book of James talking about the power of the tongue and the power of words. And not as much the specific words that we're saying, which is kind of the tip of the iceberg, but more down below the surface, what's in our heart and where those words are actually being formed, and how, if we get in there with a little bit of faith and a little bit of work, we might be able to completely transform the way that we are speaking. So a lot of us have heard the term, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. I don't know about you, but in my life, that has not been the case. I have found that words can be incredibly hurtful, whether I'm on the giving or the receiving end of that, and there are oftentimes pretty serious consequences when we use our words in harmful ways. So this first clip from Pastor Tom is where he's just talking about how powerful the tongue is, more importantly, how powerful words are. But before we jump into that, let's just think about this for a minute. Words are powerful. If you look back at the very beginning of the Bible, God spoke existence into place. Think about that for a second, that everything that we see around us, the world and the people and the trees and all the animals, it was all spoken. So the word is very powerful to God from the very beginning, and that is something that we're going to reflect on as we continue in our discussion.
James is specifically referring to our words, and I think we can all relate to that, what he's saying into our lives. It's so important to understand because it allows us to live under the grace of God and not in some made-up fantasy world that becomes religious or condemning, because we can condemn one another. We can become religious with one another all day long, every day, because I can pick out any of you and find words that you've said and say, oh, look at you, look at that. I'm not called to do that. All I'm called to do is look at my words. How can I improve my life? So we're going to live under God's grace today because we're all we all live in imperfection, but we are constantly striving towards the obedience of God by the power of His Holy Spirit. And when we understand that, that's where true life change takes place. Several truths I want to share with you today, and the first one is this, that your tongue is powerful.
So in the Bible it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I took that from John 1:1. Further on in that same chapter, he talks about how God is the Word, Jesus is the Word. And so my first question for tonight is, what makes words so powerful? And there's a part B, which is, why is Jesus called the Word? Go ahead and reflect on those, have a discussion. I'll see you back here in a minute. I hope that you had some great discussion there. So as we continue on through the message from this past weekend, Pastor Tom compares our word output and what's going on inside of our hearts to the current wildfire situation, and how clearing out all of the dead brush and leaves and logs actually helps to not cultivate an environment where forest fires can continue happening. The same thing happens in our lives. We need to clear out all the dead stuff and make room for healthy conversation so that the fire doesn't spread. So go ahead, take a look at this clip, and then I'll have a question for you.
And what I'm saying is this, sometimes we can forgive, thank you, okay, well, thank you. But yet we just kind of leave that thing back there just in case if we ever need it someday. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of like a dead tree that's fallen over. It's all good now, but I'm not going to clear it out of the way right now. I'm just going to leave that. And we leave these things that are dormant in our lives. And all it takes is a strike of lightning, or all it takes is just an ember to set that thing on fire. And then all of a sudden, you have a whole forest fire in your mind. And all of a sudden, everything's exploding. And you start bringing up all the things from the past. And you start bringing up all these things. And then all of a sudden, words that come out of your mouth that you were not expecting to come out start to come out. It's because we're allowing the power of our humanity to have control instead of the power of the Spirit of God.
So my question is pretty simple. How do we clear out the leftovers in our heart and the dead stuff? Go ahead, take a minute, discuss that. I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back. So I was talking with Pastor Brett earlier today, on this very topic. And he brought up a really cool point about taking captive our thoughts and how our thought life can lead to our speaking life and our output. And so check out this verse. It was Paul in 2 Corinthians 10:5. He says, "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." So, next question, how do we take control of our thoughts? Go ahead, discuss that. I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back. Hope you had some great discussion. So, the third point that Pastor Tom made this past weekend was that the tongue is tamed by faith. But as I was discussing it more with him, kind of off-site, he said, really, the tongue is tamed by discipline. Discipline is very important. As I was talking with Pastor Tom and Pastor Brett again, Pastor Brett was sharing that he tells this to the youth kids a lot, where let's say you're on the Taco Bell diet for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you're just not feeling good inside. Well, your input is directly linked to your output, whether that's physically or spiritually. What we're taking in can have a huge impact on what we're giving out. Go ahead and take a look at this clip from Pastor Tom this weekend.
James asked this question. He says, how can cursing God and praising God come from the same mouth? That can't be right. Fresh water will not come from a salty spring. And I think as followers of Jesus, we need to remind ourselves on a regular basis, we are no longer a salty spring.
So my last question for us today to discuss is, how does what you take in affect your thought life and your speech life? So in other words, how does what you're taking in affect your output? Are you listening to worship music and speaking life? Are you saying positive words to yourself when you're looking in the mirror in the morning, getting ready? Or are you letting that negativity and angst and anger creep in and then eventually kind of come out a little bit ugly on the other side? Go ahead, take a few minutes, discuss those questions. I'll see you in a minute. Well, that does it for the discussion this week. I hope that the discussions tonight were uplifting, encouraging, and even challenging a little bit as we look at how taming our tongue is very indicative of what's going on inside of our hearts and in our faith life, so that we can have a rhythm and a routine of faith all day, every day. If you'd like to catch up on the message from this week, check out the vodcast or listen to the podcast, Apple Podcast, iTunes, or Android, or you can just check it out on the website, southcoastchristian.com. Have a great week, and from all of us here, our staff and our group's leaders, we're praying for you. We love you. We'll see you next week. God bless.